Wales, a country filled with coastlines, mountains and history, has more castles than any country in Europe, with 600 built and 100 still standing today.
My local castle, Chirk Castle, has over 700 years of history. The construction of Chirk Castle began around 1295 during the reign of Edward I in order to conquer the last princes of Wales.
England is, as you can see, flat, whereas Wales is not. I grew up in a small village called Chirkbank. Chirkbank is situated just on the English side of the border of North Wales and England. Oswestry, the nearest town in England, is 15 minutes away from Chirkbank. Oswestry is an ancient market town filled with churches, hill forts and another castle. It's located in the north of Shropshire, close by the English and Welsh border. The name Oswestry is thought to be a corruption of Oswald's tree, and the legend that Oswald, the great Christian king of Northumbria, fought a great battle against the pagan king of Mercia, Penda. Oswald was defeated and killed in the battle. Penda, as a warning to others who might challenge his rule, dismembered Oswald's body and hung his limbs on the branches of a tree, hence the name Oswald's Tree. Living so close to the border never really affected me that much. I remember if I needed urgent medical care, it was always a nightmare trying to figure out who I needed to call, seeing as I lived in England but my doctor was in Wales, but apart from that, I never really thought anything of it. I moved to university in Surrey last year. It was only until I had the privilege of a 20-minute walk into the town from my residence that I realised how rural the areas that I grew up in really were. The hour walk into town was dangerous because of sharp turns and fast cars. Even driving was sometimes a hazard.
The effect on driving lessons has been catastrophic, really. You're looking now at having a driving test in June, July, if you're lucky.
Wow.
So all the people I've had lessons or tests cancelled, they've been in a position where they're getting, I don't know a date yet. I mean, I had one 2 days ago, should have been, last week, Friday, and that's not been even sort of rescheduled yet. And I've been online to look at tests available. There's nothing in June even. There's nothing available at all. June is the first sort of date they even give you. So they're looking at 6 months. So people who are dependent on tests for work, for transport, for whatever reason, they got no chance. You had students back for Christmas who were obviously had tests booked in while they were back for Christmas. They then got cancelled. And then they're trying to plan for Easter. That's not going to happen. So they look at summer holidays now. That's not probably going to happen. So it's been quite a big stress on the student as well. I live in Chirk, which is obviously halfway between Wrexham and Oswestry. So I work out of both test centres, if you like. So it's quite useful for me. Initially, when the Welsh one came on, I couldn't work in Wales, but I could work in England. And then it went the other way around, where I couldn't work in England, I could work in Wales. And then Wales went, so they couldn't go anywhere, so they stopped me going out of Wales, even across the border, which is so frustrating. You see people, living a mile away, coming past your front door. So that's really difficult to sort of take in. I mean, although you appreciate there's rules there for that.
What it's done, it's caused a lot of problems with certain customers not understanding the different rules either side. And then for myself, trying not to get in any trouble taking anyone over the border or bringing them back. So you have to keep up to date with it every couple of hours, checking if there's any new restrictions. Because people will book a taxi, and they could tell you it's an essential journey, but really it might not be.
Yeah.
And then it's only when you get stopped by the police, well, I could get into trouble as well.
Further along the Welsh border towards Welshpool from Oswestry is Llanymynech, a village between Montgomeryshire and Powys. The border splits the village in half, England on the east side and Wales on the west side. The village Llanymynech is also on the banks of the Lake Vyrnwy. Lake Vyrnwy is a reservoir in Powys in Wales, built in the 1880s for Liverpool Corporation Waterworks to supply Liverpool with fresh water. It flooded the head of the Vyrnwy Valley and submerged the village of Llandudwyn. At one time, the Welsh counties were referred to as wet or dry, depending on whether people could drink in pubs on Sundays. When Montgomeryshire was dry, it was legal to drink on Sundays in the two English bars of Llanymynech, but not in the Welsh bar over the road in Powys. Two of the remaining open pubs in the village were entirely in England and the third entirely in Wales.
When I was first started going out, there was a pub in the bottom end of the village called the Lion, and half of that was in England and half of that was in Wales. So when they used to do Sunday closing, Wales wouldn't let the pubs open on Sunday afternoon, so the bar used to stay open and the lounge used to have to close. You couldn't drink in the lounge, you had to drink in the bar. Because half of it was in England and half of it was in Wales, and Wales is a lot cheaper, they tried to say that they were more in Wales than they were in England, so they could pay the cheaper poll tax, in fact it is now. So they had to come out and measure the pubs to see how much of it was in England and how much of it was in Wales, and the majority of it was in England, so they had to pay the higher council tax.
Oh my gosh. Is this recent?
What would I be? I'd be about 20, so it's like 40 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. But at one point, they did try to say that because half of it was in England and half of it was in Wales, they'd have to pay council tax for both. But what they did was they just passed, measured it all, and then passed that they have to pay the English half and not the Welsh.
Wow.
And when we were in school, because the road ran down the middle, the border ran down the middle of the main road, if you lived on this side, on the left-hand side, you went to Llanymynech School, which is opposite the football pitch. If you lived on the right-hand side of the road, you went to Narrator School. In the Welsh side. It was really weird, because like you'd have kids that played with each other, and then all of a sudden you'd go to school and they couldn't go to school together.
Wow.
This same pub rivalry that had once taken place returned again in the COVID-19 lockdowns, with the Welsh pubs being able to open while the English pubs across the road had to stay closed.
There was a lot of sort of coverage in the media with the pubs, because like I said, there's 3 pubs in the village, 2 are in England, 1 are in Wales. So at any given time, you could be sat in the one pub, drinking, doing whatever you want, and then over the other side of the road, they were closed, even though they're technically in the same village. So I know that got a bit of media coverage. It's very strange.
Yeah.
But I suppose that was there's my phone. That was what it was, and we kind of just had to deal with it. But like I said, other than that, the shop's been very good, and they've not sort of turned anyone away. I couldn't trade, I couldn't technically go anywhere, but because I lived in the village, I could go and sit in the pub. So it was very, I know even down to sort of the local village shops, there was always that kind of strange, you could feel the energy in the village of, you live that side of the border, you shouldn't be here, and you live that side of the border. And it was kind of strange because it's only a little village. I don't know what the population is, but we're talking tiny. There's like a crossroads, and that's about it. So yeah, it was a little bit strange, sort of in and around the circuit breaker in the November lockdown time, where no one really knew what the grey areas were or what we were technically allowed to do.
When we first had lockdown, there was some Facebook comments saying, "Well, why are they coming over the border to England to do the shopping?" I consider it more safe to go to Oswestry shopping, because I can be in Oswestry in 10 minutes. Wrexham is 20 minutes, and Wrexham's had a higher rate of COVID, so I consider myself to be safer in Oswestry than I do in Wrexham. And I shop mainly in Oswestry normally anyway.
Yeah.
I can get things, all the shops are quite close, Lidl's, Aldi, Morrison's, etc., quite close together. And you can get in and out quite quickly. Where Wrexham, there's you've got more traffic up there, you've got more difficult shopping situations. So I feel safer in Oswestry. They may not like the fact that I come from Wales into Oswestry, but it's I just take the necessary precautions like I would anyway.
Moving back down the border to Chirkbank, I had an interview with my Auntie Joan and my mum.
Hi, Julia.
So how long have you lived in Chirkbank for?
19 and a half years now.
And has it ever made like a difference living on the border?
Well, before we came here, this is the first time we've ever lived so close to Wales. And it can get confusing because we've got a Welsh postcode, but we pay our council tax to England, and that does get confusing sometimes. Our doctors in Wales, which they're great, fantastic, but then things like the opticians I had to go and see are in England, and then the other week they had to change it, so I went to still the same company into Wales to see them in case they had to refer me to the doctors. So it does get a bit odd, but sometimes I think we can have the best of both worlds.
The first time that it really became an issue, I think, was when I had my second baby, when I had your sister Imogen, and I got ready to go down to the village to register the birth because I knew that there was a place that you could do it there. And I turned up with the baby, very proud, I had this little Welsh baby. And she said to me, "Where do you live?" And I said, "Chirkbank." And she said, "Hang on a minute, that's not quite right. It's something." And she said, "You're in Shropshire, you're not in Chirk." And I was absolutely horrified. I couldn't believe it because I'd always thought we lived in Wales, but it turned out we were literally 1 foot either side, and we were actually on the English side, so I had a little English baby instead. We have a Welsh postcode as well, which means that any parcels that go missing, we can't just pop to the local town and pick them up, which is 10 minutes away. We have to go all the way, a 20-minute drive into town the other way because of the postcode issue, because we've got a Welsh postcode. Now, if one of my children was to apply to go to a Welsh university, which is, we got a Welsh postcode, they will actually, and I've got a Welsh GP, but they will look up our postcode and they know that actually this particular house and the houses in this street are in England, not Wales, despite the postcode. And we would be refused that free university place, but somebody just living across the street up there would be able to get university free because they're in Wales.
Chirk Aqueduct is an aqueduct that carries the Llangollen Canal across the Ceiriog Valley near Chirk, stretching across the two countries. Unlike Llanymynech, where the border was the road, this time it's a river called River Ceiriog. This river runs underneath the road connecting Chirk in Wales with Chirkbank in England. Legally, residents of Chirkbank had to travel 15 minutes to Oswestry instead of entering Chirk, less than a 1-minute drive away. People weren't able to get to work, self-employed people were struggling, being unable to get to the right side of the border with the relaxed rules. If the border of Wales was straight, Oswestry would be completely in Wales.
So do you, because you're from Norfolk,
Yeah.
you I'm guessing class yourself more as English rather than Welsh?
Yes, definitely, yes. I've got my plate on my car has an English badge on it, not a Welsh one.
Whenever you go anywhere, anybody that doesn't, like if you go further into the country, they always say, "Do you live in Wales?" You go, "Really Welsh twang." And we go, "No, I don't live in Wales at all. I live in England." And they go, "Oh, how far away from Wales do you live?" "About 500 yards."
Yeah.
"Oh, well, I live in Wales." "No, I don't. I'm English."
Personally, I class myself as English, but we're all mixed here, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone's different. It's someone you might think is English will actually be Welsh. They'll follow all the Welsh teams.
So my last question. So you live literally on the border. The border's in your garden. Do you class yourself as Welsh or English?
Well, personally, I'm not local. Originally, I moved here when I was 11. I was born in East London, so
nice.
I am very much English. But yeah, where do I live? I live in England. If anyone asks, but it's but yeah, it is a funny one because I've always played football in Wales, but businesses in England and schoolmates live in Wales. Schoolmates went to other schools in Wales, but because it's so sort of interlinked, it's funny really being sort of an outsider. You kind of see the English people in this area don't like the Welsh, and the Welsh don't like the English. And I'm from miles away, so I don't really care either way. It's quite funny, really. It's only camaraderie, it's only a little bit of banter, but I've never really bought into it because I am very much English.